And welcome back to Season 2 of From the Ground Up. I'm your new co-host, Taylor.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're back for Season 2 and ready to share some more stories. If you're just tuning into the show, From the Ground Up is a podcast that's run completely by the University of Sioux Falls students. We're part of the Entrepreneurial Studies program. And we started this show to, connect other students and future entrepreneurs to like current and local businesses and business owners and kind of hear their stories and what they're all about. And we'll invite local entrepreneurs on. They'll be our honored guests and let them tell their stories about how they built their business and brands from the ground up. And today we actually have the mayor of Sioux Falls, Mr. Mayor Paul TenHaken.
Hey,
how you doing?
What's going on? Nice intro, man. You nailed it.
Appreciate it.
First guest of Season 2, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Big honor.
Honored. Thank you for having me.
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, like family, background, things like that?
Yeah, so first off, USF alum. Got my MBA there, so go
Love
cool.
it.
Yep. I grew up in Minnesota, so you're Woodbury,
Yep.
Maddie, but I was in Worthington, Minnesota. You drive through
Okay.
Worthington to get
Yep.
to USF. Grew up in Minnesota, went to college in Northwest Iowa, Dordt College. I graduated in 2000. Were you guys born that yet?
2001.
2000.
Jeez Louise. Okay, so in 2000, the internet, you see, you only know a life with the internet. That's all you know.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but in 2000, when I graduated college, the internet was like a new thing. Okay, social media wasn't a thing. Smartphones weren't a thing. So I graduated with a degree in graphic design, and I was going to be a web developer because I saw this, career ahead of me in web development. The web was new, the internet was new, and I just kind of wanted to ride that wave. So I graduated with a degree in that, moved to Sioux Falls, married a beautiful girl, and started my career here. And so for the first 7-8 years of life, I was in marketing and web development, and I did that for different companies. Then I started my own business in 2008. I did that for about a decade before deciding to run for office, of which I am now in year 4 of being the mayor of the greatest city in the world. So along the way, I had 3 kids, 16, 13, and 9. And I've been married to Jill for 22 years. And life is good, man. So there's a lot of gaps in that story, but that's how I got to this spot.
Awesome. Okay, so before we jump into the questions, we would like to shout out the sponsor for today's episode, Wade Hansen and Associates. Wade Hansen and Associates is a luxury real estate company based in Woodbury, Minnesota. Wade Hansen, the lead real estate broker and #1 luxury broker in the state of Minnesota, works to get you what you want and need in a timely manner without any confusing lingo or backward processes. You can expect professional service and proactive responses. Real estate is one of the most significant financial and legal business transactions you'll conduct, and Wade Hansen brings nearly 20 years of broker-level experience, wisdom, and tailored expertise to each of his clients. You can find out more information at wadehansen.com.
Go Wade, baby.
It's my dad, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
For all your real estate needs. I love it. Hey, when you're hustling, starting a business, some of your first customers or clients are often like friends and family, right?
Very true.
Gotta get the ball rolling.
They get the ball rolling for you because they believe in you.
Yeah. Well, to get the thoughts flowing and a conversation going, let's just get a quick question out. What's it been like for the past 4 years now? What's it been like being in public office, being the mayor for 4 years?
Well, it's really weird because it feels like I've had 2 terms because I got elected in 2018, and then so from 2018 to 2020 is kind of 1 term, and then COVID to today almost feels like a different term because everything is just very, very different.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding, man. It's very rewarding job, but the last 2 years have been very hard, very challenging. Our country is very divided. People are very angry, nervous, concerned, anxious. So the last 2 years with COVID, with racial tensions, with how divisive politics has gotten, the last 2 years have been very different than the first 2 years. I wouldn't say necessarily worse, just different. So through it all, Sioux Falls has, I think, done really well. The community's done well. The economy is very strong. Our crime is down this year compared to last year in almost every category. We've spent a record number of our highest percentage of our budget ever on our infrastructure and our roads. So I think our infrastructure is in good shape. So I think things are good, but it's been a really wonky time to be an elected official in the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, I think definitely compared to coming from Arizona and being in a much bigger city. I mean, I think there's less than 200,000 people in Sioux Falls, but seeing how differently COVID affects a smaller city compared to a larger city, it's the people are much nicer here. I will be honest about that. But it's very interesting seeing how businesses, it's much smaller businesses, so they need to stay active, and it's much more feeding the community, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a good point there in that the smaller a community is, the more kind of collegial and the community atmosphere is. And so I think Sioux Falls really worked together, to kind of get through the pandemic. A great example is as soon as the pandemic hit, we set up a fund that people could apply $4 to cover their rent, cover their mortgage, because especially a lot of people in the service industry, food workers, restaurant workers, hotel workers, they lost their jobs, back in April and May because no one was traveling, no one was eating out, restaurants were shut down. And we made $3.5-4 million worth of grants to people to keep them housed during that time. And that's very rare for a community our size to raise that much money just to give back to people to keep them in their homes and make sure they had housing security during kind of an unstable time. So you would have a hard time even in Phoenix doing that. If you stood that up in Phoenix, you wouldn't get people donating. A lot of times the bigger the community, the more they rely on the government to take care of their problems and challenges.
Yeah. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. How about you tell us a little bit about ClickRain and how you built that from the ground up?
So, I don't know if I mentioned it in my intro. ClickRain was a company I started in 2008, ran that for 10 years. I started that because I saw a gap in social media for businesses. So, again, you guys are young enough that you only know a world with social media. But in 2008, Twitter was about a year old. Facebook was not available to the general public. There's obviously no Instagram, there's no Snapchat, there's no TikTok, there's none of that. There's YouTube, but people didn't really use it a lot. And so I saw an opportunity kind of on the horizon with social media and MySpace at that time, which was really growing, and thinking hey, people are going to be using platforms like this a lot more into the future. And so decided to start a company that would help businesses develop and curate a social media presence. My first client was a politician who needed a MySpace page for his campaign. And I did MySpace pages that first year for people and helped them understand what MySpace was. And the company just grew from there. So you can see, the next year Facebook became a thing, and then people were using Twitter more, and then Instagram rolled around, and a lot of companies were trying to figure out how to weave social media into their overall marketing strategy. And so for the next 10 years, then ClickRain grew as a company, helping businesses and organizations do that, work social media into their overall marketing strategy. And it was just good timing. We started the company at a good time. And when I exited the company in 2018, I think, we had maybe 35, 40 employees, something like that. And it was a blast, but it was just, it was also time to be done. I mean, I did it for 10 years. And I just felt called to pursue the next chapter in life, which for me, I've always been interested in serving people, not really interested in politics per se, but I enjoy helping people, wherever I can. And so politics is a natural kind of avenue to pursue if that's a passion of yours. So that's how I got to this point.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit more about being the role of the CEO? What does that role entail? And obviously it's different than any other team member. So how different is that?
Yeah. Well, initially, when you're the CEO, you are the CEO, but you're also doing the Facebook ads, and you're billing clients in QuickBooks, and you're paying the rent, and you're stocking the fridge with Cokes, so you're doing everything. And then as the company started to grow, my position and my role was less and less in digital marketing and more in people leadership. So that's, I think, the case for most CEOs and most executives as they grow in an organization. They maybe started a company because they had a passion about widgets. For me, I had a passion about digital marketing. But as the company grew, I had a lot of people that were much better at me than doing that actual work. They're much smarter than me, much more knowledgeable. So I had to kind of pivot my focus on kind of just running the day-to-day operations of a company than being in the day-to-day of digital marketing. And so that's how things kind of progressed for me. And it come to find out I really enjoyed the people side of things. I still tried to keep my act sharp on digital marketing and everything I could there, but I became pretty comfortable with the fact that I was kind of a chief people officer, more than a chief executive officer as the company grew.
Cool. All right, so could you tell us what ClickRain's mission was and what your core values were within the company?
Yeah, so interesting question. You probably don't hear this a lot from a for-profit business, but our mission was, I still remember it, mission statement: we seek to honor and glorify God's name by providing leading-edge digital marketing services to clients nationwide. So we put God in our mission statement because for me, work is about your purpose and your calling, and work is going to be very hollow if your purpose is just to make money and grow a company.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people who do that. And if your sole goal in life is making money, you're just going to really be disappointed, because if that happens and you're lucky enough to have some financial success, you'll realize that it's never enough and you always keep chasing it. So for me as a Christian, I felt that our purpose was to honor God with our talents through digital marketing by providing this service, treating people properly, doing pro bono work for organizations that needed it to help get their message out through digital. So to me, it was kind of my mission field a little bit. I always talked about ClickRain. We had 35 employees, and that was my mission field, to reach those 35 people and the clients we serve. So that was our mission. Our core values, I don't know if we had any. If we did, they weren't ingrained in my DNA like that mission statement was. I mean, 6 years later, I can still just recite it off the top of my head. And it was very unique to have a faith-based mission statement, because you wouldn't find God or Jesus in, Nike's mission statement or, Under Armour's mission statement. But it wasn't ours. I was really proud of that.
Right. That's awesome. How did you express that mission? Well, how did you work towards your mission, and what did you do to show people that you were, implying this mission upon your company? Sure.
Well, the hard part about being a person of faith in business is people will say, like, well, so do you have to be a Christian to work at that company? Like, what if you're a Muslim? What if you're whatever, and you have God in your mission statement? And to which I would always say, listen, you can be whatever to work here. I don't care what your religion is, but you have to know you're going to work for a company that is putting God first. So as long as you're comfortable with that, so it's like if you go to work for a company that makes Bibles for a living, you can't go into that company and be like, God, you guys are pushing like Bibles all the time on me. Like, well, that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So you have to know that if you work here, you're going to be around the Bible.
Yeah.
If you work at ClickRain, we're going to have devotions, at times, and we'll open with prayer before certain meetings. We gave a lot of money back to the communities, to different causes that the employees would identify. We would give a lot of our time and efforts back free to, faith-based organizations that needed our help and our assistance. I implemented a benefit where we paid for employees to go on mission trips overseas. So if they wanted to go on a mission trip, the company would pay for it. And the only requirement was 2 requirements. It had to be for a week solid, and it had to be overseas, because I didn't want someone just checking out for like 2 days and going to, Milwaukee for some service trips.
Right.
Like, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to get overseas, feel what it's like to be a minority in another country, and then you need to like unplug and do this work for a week. And so we had a lot of employees take advantage of that benefit. And I put that benefit in place because I had gone on several mission trips that were really impactful in my life. Mm-hmm. And I knew how impactful it is when someone actually just gets out of their comfort zone and goes somewhere else. But too few people do that because they're nervous, or they'd rather go to, Cancun or something like that. If I got a week off, like, I'm not going to go to Haiti or, serve in the Dominican. I'd rather go, to California to the beach. And it's like, well, you can do that anytime, But here, a company is paying for me to do this. I mean, you'd be silly not to take advantage of it.
Right. That's so cool. I love that.
So kind of with after COVID's impact and everything, a lot of businesses transferred to like at-home work and Zooming in, things like that. I guess before and up until 2018, being like on site, what was the dynamic like? Everyone working together, how was that done?
You talking about at the city of Sioux Falls or at ClickRain or just in general society?
Yeah, at ClickRain.
Yeah. So, like most businesses, I mean, we had a pretty sweet open office environment, which it's like the great debate of today. Open office environments, are they good or bad? Or I think they're fantastic. People all duck into offices, you lose a little bit of community. But we had a great open office environment. We were pretty flexible with our work, but we also wanted people to be in the office, because I'm just a big believer, and I'm starting to see it already now, that if people are not together in community, the culture really never gets to be what it could truly be. I mean, you can have a workplace culture and an organizational culture, but a Zoom culture only goes so far. And now I've started to see, now 2 years into the pandemic, these companies that have, I met with a guy this morning, his business, they're still not back in the office. They're going back to the office like next month for the first time since like April of 2020.
Yeah.
So those employees have been remote. That's been very hard for them. They've had turnover as a result of that. I heard of one guy recently, he just quit his job over Zoom to his boss. They live in the same town. They're both in Sioux Falls. But he's been nervous to go back to work 2 years into the pandemic, and a 10-year employee, he felt it was appropriate to quit over Zoom, last week. And you live in the same city with your boss, man, you meet with the guy. But for some reason, we've created this mentality that that's acceptable now. And it's like, that is not normal. That is not right.
Yeah.
This guy, you're a 10-year employee here. You're one of his greatest employees, and you just quit over Zoom on the guy. So I think we're going to be moving into this, as we are all talking about, just this hybrid situation now where workplaces will be more flexible. Call me old school, if you will, but I still believe there's a place for offices and for people to be in office and be in community together. And if people don't want that and feel they want to work remotely only, that's fine. Then my company probably wouldn't be the place to do that.
Sure.
Because I believe that in-person culture is a big part of an organization's success.
Mm-hmm. So you'd have a strong emphasis on your more on-ground, people working together in community, all looking at them in person.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part,
Right.
But I think if I ran a company today, I'd probably, and I'm just spitballing, let's say I still ran a company like ClickRain today, I'd say, hey, for sure, minimum of 3 days a week, you got to be in this office. And for the other 2 days a week, it's up to you. If you want to work remote, if you want to come in, whatever. But at a minimum, that's probably be the policy I'd put in place. And I'm just throwing that off the top of my head. I'm sure people would fight that or not appreciate it, but I think that'd be a good mix.
Yeah, remote work is definitely not the same as being in the office.
It's not the same at all. And I've seen the mental health ramifications on a lot of people. We are humans. We're made to be in community with each other. And what happens to people when they are taken out of community and put in a spare bedroom in their house all day long, and then they go upstairs and they're with their family, they go do that for 5 days in a row, it's not good for people. I mean, we as humans are social creatures, and so some sort of social interaction, well, if it's not at work, you better find it someplace else, at the gym or at kids events or something, because it's good for your mental health to be around other people.
Absolutely.
So what was the financing like when you first started ClickRain, and were there any significant differences compared to when you were last with them with the financing side?
Well, the financing, that's a long story, but I started the company with 4 partners and me. There's 5 of us. We each put in $5,000 of our own money. So it was bootstrap cash. So we started the company with $25,000. So I was 1/5 owner of that company. And, when I exited the company, we were about a $5 million revenue company. So that was based on that really early. At the time, $5,000 was like, dude, I don't have $5,000 just to like put at this, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
We needed 25 grand. I certainly didn't have 25 grand, so I had 4 other people that put in 5 grand. So now I was 1/5 owner. That was mistake number 1. So the company grew. We took that 25 grand. First year we did 250 grand or something in revenue. Company kept growing, and I decided, you know what? I want to buy out these initial investors because they were kind of passive investors. They weren't part of the company. Well, now I was a victim of my own success in that the company was worth a lot more than the 5 grand they put in. So I had to buy them out at a very high valuation. And I had to take out a second mortgage on my home. So I took out a second mortgage on my home to buy out these partners. And it was good. I mean, I'm glad I did it then versus waiting 4 or 5 years down the road when that valuation would have been exponentially higher. But so we were a bootstrap company the whole time and never had a loan on the books, never any sort of bank financing for anything. I mean, we had some lines of credit that we'd maybe tap once in a while if, you know, payroll was tight with accounts receivable or something like that. So the lessons there for me are always, hey, before you bring on a partner or give someone equity, you just got to be really, really cautious on that because that's hard to undo. And I see a lot of people who start businesses like, oh, me and my buddy, we love podcasts. So we're going to start this podcast company and we each put in 2 grand and it's great. Now, what if your podcast grows to 20 million listeners and it's worth $6 million? And now you and your buddy don't get along very well. Well, now you know it's $3 million to get rid of your buddy. So having the right buy-sell in place, the right agreements in place is all really, really important for entrepreneurs when they start a business because no one ever starts a business or gets into a partnership to get out of it. You don't ever get married to be like, I think we're going to get a divorce someday, but we're gonna get married first.
Yeah.
You get married because you think it's going to be forever. And you get in a partnership, it's like, this is going to be forever. We're going to be like Ben and Jerry's, man. And we're going to be the best partners ever.
Yeah.
And the quickest ship to sink is a partnership. And I tell that to people, like, just know that go into a partnership with the plans of how you're going to get out of the partnership.
Good advice.
As you were choosing to step down from CEO at ClickRain, did you have any like parting advice or anything like that for your team as you were making that transition to step away?
Just don't screw it up. You know, not really. My big thing was I wanted to keep that culture because that faith-based culture was very important to me. Quite honestly, I assume that's still in place there. You know, I'm not really in touch with the company anymore. I'm quite busy, you know, in my life now. I believe they still have a really strong culture. I believe faith is still a part of that culture. To me, that's more important than anything else that would live on. And so, you know, my advice, I brought in a CEO that I kind of groomed for a little while to take over the company. When I hired her initially, I knew she had the potential to be our next CEO. And she did become our CEO. And she's been incredible. I think she's continued to carry the company's vision and the company culture forward. She's grown the business, which is great. It's fun to watch her and the rest of my former partners succeeding. So,
cool. Okay, so we're about halfway through, and we would like to give Wade Hansen and Associates another shout out. Wade Hansen and Associates is a real estate company based in Woodbury, Minnesota. Wade Hansen, the lead real estate broker and #1 luxury real estate broker in the state of Minnesota, works to get you what you want and need in a timely manner without any confusing lingo or backward processes. You can expect professional service and proactive responses. Real estate is one of the most significant financial and legal business transactions you'll conduct, and Wade Hansen brings nearly 20 years of broker-level experience, wisdom, and tailored expertise to each of his clients. You can find more about Wade Hansen at wadehansen.com.
All right. To keep things going here, have there been any like lessons that you've learned or advice you'd give that you'd want to share that you'd feel like would be helpful to like incoming entrepreneurs trying to start a business?
Well, the biggest one I already touched on, and that's the equity, and you know, making sure that if you start a bit, sometimes you have to take equity. You know, sometimes you see families go south. For instance, let's say Wade Hansen. Let's say you want to start a business. Say, hey Wade, you put 10 grand in this and the company goes south. I've seen like sons and daughters and parents go south because the company will be a $100 million company. Now Wade's one half owner and Wade, I've seen families divided over that. So even family members, family money sometimes is some of the hardest money to take.
Yeah.
So no offense, Wade. Does Wade listen? Okay.
Yep, he'll be listening.
Okay. But so you want to be very cautious with that. The other thing, and I'm mentoring a young entrepreneur right now as well, who's trying to get his business off the ground, and you want to just be, man, as frugal as possible as you can in those early days. I mean, get the cheap furniture. Don't pay yourself. Just cut as much expenses as you can early on. And I see some entrepreneurs today will see the success of someone and they'll want to be there right away. Okay, they'll want to have an office, they'll want to have nice furniture, they want to have all this stuff. And it's like, well, you haven't made it there yet, so you gotta hustle a little bit longer. Be a little bit more hungry, be a little bit more frugal, with your finances. And so I think if you're not good at managing money, you will not be a good entrepreneur. You can have the greatest idea in the world, but if you cannot manage money, you will not be a good entrepreneur. The other thing is, if you cannot do sales, you will not be a good entrepreneur. You are constantly selling. Even if you have a sales team, you're going to be selling your vision to venture capitalists. You're going to be selling your brand to different. You are always selling. Even me as a mayor, all I do all day long is I sell. Sell. Sell in the community on this idea. Why should we do this? Why should we spend money on this? Before I click right, I'm selling my employees why we should come back to work. I'm selling them on why this benefit is good. I'm selling clients on why they need us. You're always selling. So being good at sales and good at finances are two really, really key things for anybody starting a business.
I agree. So how did you decide to step down your path as an entrepreneur? What has been your experience with failure? Like, what failures have you had?
Yeah, well, tons. I think, I'm going to focus more on the last couple of years as mayor. So this really isn't entrepreneurial, but I almost take a lot of entrepreneurial angles to my role as mayor because I feel like I'm running a city, as the chief executive. And so the last couple of years have been very, very hard in the decision making. And what I've learned from that and what you learn from failure, and I'm not saying we failed at anything, but there's been a lot of pitches in the dirt that have been thrown. And the quickest way to strike out in sports is to swing at a pitch in the dirt. In baseball, this catcher.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great pitch because everyone thinks they can golf it out of the ballpark, and you rarely hit them. Mm-hmm. And in society, we throw a lot of pitches in the dirt on social media. We're angry. We jab at people. And you just got to learn to lay off those. And you'll have those in business too. As you succeed or as you have maybe some early wins, people will want to take you down because they don't want to see you succeed. They will instantly not like you just because you're having some levels of success. So for me, when that would happen at Click Rain, or whether it happens in the city when we get some wins on something, there's always people who want to take you down. And I've gotten really good at getting pretty Teflon skin and realizing that with success comes criticism, and that's okay. And you just have to learn to deal with that and weather that. So I think, a lot of times we prepare for failure. I think you have to be prepared for success too, because sometimes success is almost harder than failure. But the age-old adage, failure. I one time at Click Rain, I remember we couldn't make payroll on a Friday, and I met my wife at the diner, and we're eating. I'm almost crying, and I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I can't pay these people. You need failure to appreciate the real wins. I mean, if you don't have the low points, you don't appreciate the high points. And so just perseverance, pressing through those times. We did make payroll. That day I got back to the office. It was a Thursday. Payroll came out the next day. There was a check in the mail that covered payroll, and then we had like an extra $100 or something. So it worked out. And that was like the lowest point we had financially, but we swung through it.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, the last question I got for you. What has your experience been with like hiring and firing team members? if that was your role.
Yeah, man, I've hired and I've fired a lot of people over the years, not only in my current role, but in my previous role. Everybody, you hear this all the time, but I'm a big culture guy. I mean, I'll give anybody a shot if they're a good person. I mean, but there are certain skills that you need for a job that you can't. You either have it or you don't. So people always say, well, you hire for their culture fit. You can always train for anything. Well, I can't train someone to be a great drainage engineer if they're just not wired to do that work. So you need to have some level of skill or interest in that position. But I judge people for a living. It's kind of my job. I just have to read people, and I can always tell when someone wants it, when they're going to be a fit, when they're bought into the culture, when they come prepared to an interview, when they have questions to ask me, when I can tell they've done their homework, when they're engaged. I mean, those people just really stand out. What I have noticed, and I noticed this a lot at ClickRain, is how lazy the hiring process had gotten. Where people would just send you a DM, or they would like connect with you on LinkedIn, and I could count on my one hand the number of people who ever stopped by my office, like dropped off a resume and a can of Diet Mountain Dew and said, hey, can you make sure Paul gets this? Like if someone would have done that, they would have stood out head and shoulders above anybody else, because no one does that kind of stuff. We all do it on like LinkedIn or like Twitter.
Yeah, everything's online nowadays.
Yeah. So to try and separate yourself is very, very hard. So some of that shoe leather, like showing up to a place and leaving them a gift behind or something, really makes an impact. As far as firing people, for me just got a lot easier the more I had to do it. And firing people, for the most part, I believe that it can be done in a very, humane way, where it's just like, hey, I love you, man. You're a great dude. You're just not a fit for this role anymore. But I think where you'd be better at would be an organization that could allow you to do this because you're really good at this. And so just giving people an opportunity, or sometimes I'd set them up with another opportunity on their way out the door, right, that I knew existed. I can say with the one or two exceptions, almost everybody that I've ever had to have that discussion with, we're still friends. We're still, we still get along. We run into each other, and so that's always my goal when I have to, part with an employee. It's like, how can we still be friends after this, and just realize it wasn't a great fit. And I think that's how I try and usually approach when we have to have those hard discussions.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on with us today. The big takeaways, be frugal and work in community. I think those two things combined are what make a very good business and a very good business model.
I agree. All right, to end the episode, we would like to give you a thank you card for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. And there's a special USF mug for you and a gift card provided to you by Sweet Cheeks inside. Sweet Cheeks is a locally owned ice cream / frozen yogurt shop. They love all types of sweet treats and wanted a place that has something for everyone. They serve ice cream, frozen yogurt, dairy-free, and vegan-friendly options, plus 50 topping options and cotton candy. Newly opened in October 2021 and owned by a female USF graduate, they are thrilled to be serving the Sioux Falls community and offering an atmosphere that is like no other to be the highlight of everyone's day. They change their flavors weekly, so there's always something new for you to try. You can find Sweet Cheeks at 3609 West Avera Drive in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And to find more information, go to sweetcheeks605.com.
Big thanks again to our lovely guest, Mr. Mayor Paul TenHaken. This has been Taylor.
And Maddie.
With From the Ground Up.